Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Country Profile Project about China. My name is Samantha, and my group members are Michelle, Becca, Mallory, Andrew, and Alyssa. So before we get into the bulk of the project, we wanted to touch on some of the highlights of Chinese history. Now, Chinese history dates back thousands of years, and it's one of the most continuously operating civilizations in human history. So we're just going to skim through it and get to the really, really important parts. So some of the most important Chinese dynasties in terms of establishing a national identity are listed here. And these did everything from uniting China under one ruling system to taking all the ethnic writing styles and making one national writing style. It's also important for you to understand some of the wars of the 19th and 20th centuries in order to understand why events in modern China are happening. It's especially interesting to look at the First and Second Opium Wars because not only did they set the precedent for how China approaches international relations, but it also resulted in the loss of the Hong Kong territory to British control. So as of now, China is referred to as the People's Republic of China. It has gone by different names in the past, but right now it's the People's Republic of China. In modern history, you may know a lot more about these things: Tiananmen Square, the Three Gorges Dam, upheavals in Hong Kong right now. But what you might not be too aware about is right now, the Chinese government has forced and is forcing, as we speak, over 1 million Uyghur Muslims into what they refer to as re-education camps, which are internment camps in which they're being forced to strip of their religious identity and engage in practices that directly go against their religion. It's also important to know about some of the other ethnic groups in China. So over 90% of the entire Chinese population is ethnically Han, and it's China's largest ethnic group. There are 55 other ethnic groups, with the Zhuang and the Hui being the first and second largest minority groups, respectively. And then you also have other groups like the Mongols, which are really known for their mix of traditional and modern living, as well as the Uyghur Muslims, as I mentioned before.
Now we're going to talk about China's economy and population. This is just a brief overview of China's economy. They're an upper middle income country and they have the world's second largest economy. And the per capita income is only about 1/4 of that of high income countries. And unemployment is pretty low at 4.4%. The demographics of China are pretty well spread out. The population is very large and has a population growth rate of 0.32%, which is fairly small, and the total fertility rate of 1.7 live births per woman, which is also very small and contributes to the low growth rate. The life expectancy is about 77.5 years, and infant mortality is 8.4. And we have dependency ratios at the bottom, and the youth dependency ratio is about 25.2%. And this would mean that the government would have to put into more care and money into children and education. And next, we're going to get into health disparities. These are higher burden of illness, injury, disability, or mortality experienced by one group relative to the other. And so in China, there seems to be a pretty high amount of health disparities among different groups. So we have large gaps in income and wealth between urban and rural areas in China, and it's one of the biggest gaps in the world. In 2009, there was a study, and 11.8% of the Chinese population lived below the poverty line, and 26% of urban and 44% of rural dwellers did not have access to basic sanitation. There's also a huge difference in hospital numbers distributed between urban and rural areas, and there's a lower average number of doctors and nurses that are found in rural areas compared to urbanized areas of China. There also was seen that maternal and child mortality rate in rural areas is 2.5 times that of urban areas, and the maternal mortality rate is 10 times higher in the poorest province than in the richest one. And the life expectancy gap was also really high, of 13 years between the two provinces. And this is significant because there shouldn't be this much of a difference in health access between different groups of people living in the same country, especially one that has such as good of economy as it does.
Next are the SDGs for China, which are the Sustainable Development Goals. These were all adopted in 2015 by every member of the UN. They have three overarching goals, which is to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure peace and prosperity by 2030. And they were designed so that every country involved that's in the UN will achieve these goals by the same time, meaning that any country that struggles to implement some policies will have other countries step in to help them with those. Next were some of the focuses for China that I chose to look at. One of them was no poverty, which was one that we're making great progress with considering how many people China has. And they found the success through, through support by the Chinese government. Another one was affordable and clean energy, since that's a problem that many countries are going to be facing soon. China is the leading producer of electricity from renewable sources, but they only provide 36% of their energy through renewable sources. Another one was responsible consumption and production, since China has a lot of emission issues and they are looking to enforce regulations, support research, and develop new tools to monitor the impacts. And they're also trying to reduce their global greenhouse gas emissions, since they were not at the levels agreed upon in the Paris Agreement.
Cultural norms, religion and culture. The main religion is Taoism, which focuses on the need to live in harmony with the source of all existence. And then a lot of their cultural practices are based off Confucianism, which is a philosophy that stresses duty, loyalty, and honor. Social class and faith. So during the Qin Dynasty, class division was clearly defined. When communism became the new government, they tried to get rid of the classes, but due to the disproportionate development of China, there is a large gap between rich and poor still. Faith, which is a very important concept in Chinese society. A synonym for faith would be respect. There are 4 types: Du Manzu, Gai Manzu, Liu Manzu, and Cheng Manzu. It is critical you avoid losing face at all times. Communication and respect. China is one of the most linguistical, diverse countries in the world. When speaking to someone in China, nonverbal communication also plays a huge part into it. So your posture, your eye contact, which you don't make often, and your facial expressions do also play a role. When greeting, they are always formal. The eldest is always greeted first. Handshakes are the usual way, and you address by honorable title then surname, and they will let you know if first name basis is acceptable. Other ways to show respect is through personal space, which is very important. Only close family and friends touch. And then pre-pandemic times, wearing a mask was also a way to show respect, as if you were sick, it would prevent from spreading to others, but also in more recent times, it's more common due to the bad air pollution. Family and gender roles. So family is very important. Extended family tend to live with each other. If children do have to move away due to work, they do come visit often. China did have the one-child policy to help with the rapid growth, but that was abandoned in 2015. This did cause some gender roles throughout. So some of those that are still there was men seem to have more authority than women. The women were seen as a possession of men, but in the 20th century, they try to get gender equality throughout, but some communities today still have gender inequality. And although women do have more advantages now, it is still very difficult for them to get roles traditionally held by men.
Education. China invests 4% of their total GDP towards education. The literacy rate of China is 96.8% of the total population. That is 98.5% of males and 95.2% of females that are aged 15 and over that can read and write. As stated earlier in the lecture, China has a high youth dependency ratio, so that is 25.2, and that high youth dependency ratio indicates that they need a greater investment in schooling and other services for children because they do have a large percentage of children. The school life expectancy and the breakdown. So the average Chinese person will spend about 14 years from primary school to tertiary education. That is 3 years of optional kindergarten and then 9 years of compulsory education. So that 9 years of compulsory education is made up of 6 years of primary school starting at age 6 and then 3 years of junior high or junior education school. That is free and provided by the government. It is also required. Then they take the senior high entrance exam. 87% of students will pass that exam. 57% of that 87% will go on to regular senior secondary education schools to gain knowledge in culture and scientific studies. Then 43% will go on to do secondary vocational school and be trained with skills for employment. That is job training. So in high school, so that's senior secondary education, students will choose between social sciences and natural sciences off the bat. They will all take Chinese, English, and mathematics, but then social sciences students will take politics, history, and geography, versus natural sciences students will take physics, chemistry, and biology. Now, a lot of pressure is put on students to do well in their college entrance exam, and then that college entrance exam is going to be a standardized test that across the board all colleges will look at and have benchmarks for what students need to make to get into that college. That college entrance exam is going to be all Chinese, mathematics, and English, and then it will also focus on those 3 areas of studies in either social sciences or natural sciences that those students took. Now, it is a lot of pressure because only 40% of students pass that first time. It is a very, very hard exam.
Health and what health looks like in China. So an overall overview of what health looks like in China is that the neonatal mortality is 4 per 1,000 live births. And then under 5 mortality is 7.9 per 1,000 live births. However, there is a difference between males and females. The females is slightly lower at 7, and then the males is slightly higher at 8. Maternal mortality is 19.6, and then the HALE is 69. So between life expectancy and the HALE, there is a 7-year discrepancy between the two. And then, so when you go to the doctor in China, you have a choice. You can either go to a public provider or doctor's office that's basically fully governmentally funded, or you can go to a private doctor as well. So the medical schools are only public. There's no private schools. And the reason for that is because they're basically all government funded and highly subsidized. So per year of medical school is $3,000 for USD. And then health trends in China, 27% of the population report being smokers, and 7% of the population is obese. So they have a very low obesity rate, but a higher smoking rate. So they're going to have more health and respiratory illnesses. So the healthcare system insurance. As of 2011, they have universal health coverage across China. And this is a 2-part system. There's a voluntary part, and then there's a mandatory employment-based part. So the voluntary part is highly government funded, and there are some individual premiums. However, it's basically when you go to the doctor, you pay like $1. And then the employment-based is funded by payroll taxes and the employer and some government. Secondary insurance is rare, but it is available to make up some of the gaps. So the basic plan covers primary care, hospital care, specialties, mental health, and also prescriptions and traditional medicine.
Holistic medicine was very important in traditional Chinese medicine. Holistic medicine focuses on healing of the entire body instead of just physical symptoms. Mainly focused on qi, which was to help balance a person's yin and yang, which is their good and bad side. Acupuncture was one of the ways that they would do that. It would direct the qi with the pins, and Tai Chi was also some way to do that, which was a physical molding of it. And they used a lot of herbal remedies, which was usually made from plant elements and extracts. It was used for a very long time, the oldest manuscript from 168 BC, and it was passed down throughout generations. The major health industries in China are pharmaceuticals. It's actually one of the largest industries that they have. They manufacture over 15,000 drugs. They do a lot of biotech research for lower end technologies, a lot of healthcare equipment, and typical hospital providers as well.